You want more stuff in 7 Days to Die, and I'm going to tell you how to find it. Just as a quick preface, I might throw a lot of numbers out here today, but don't worry, I'll explain what they all mean in this video. In 7 Days to Die, there are 4 tiers of loot. There's Tier 0, this is for game stage 1 to 11. If you're really new to 7 Days to Die and don't know what game stage is, don't worry, I'll explain what it is later. After Tier 0 you have Tier 1, this is available at game stage 12 to 49. After that you have Tier 2, this is game stage 50 to 90. And then, at any game stage above 91, you are in Tier 3. To get an idea of what each of these loot tables consists of, here are some examples of the things you can find at each tier. At Tier 0 you can find primitive weapons and armour such as wooden clubs and padded armour. At Tier 1 you'll start to find higher quality primitive equipment and you'll even have a small chance of getting real guns. At Tier 2 things start to get interesting. Now you have a small chance of getting some real endgame equipment like Tier 3 armours and have a much better chance of finding real firearms like AK-47s and pump action shotguns. At Tier 3 there are no loot limitations, you have a chance to find absolutely anything in the game. Keep in mind that there are still rare items at this tier, such as high quality SWAT helmets and auto shotguns. So now you know how loot is calculated, you're probably wondering at least one of two things. What is game stage, and how do I increase it? Game stage is a number assigned to your character. It decides what type of enemies can spawn, with harder enemies being more common at higher game stages. It also decides what loot you get, as well as the quality of the loot. So how do you raise it? Well, game stage is calculated from two numbers, your in-game level and the number of days you have survived. Specifically, this is the equation for game stage. Player level plus days alive to the power of 1.2. As a side note, the loot tier for a party in multiplayer is the same as the game stage of the player with the highest game stage. So a group of 2, where one person has a game stage of 100, and another is at 50, the party loot game stage would be 100. So to answer your question, how do I raise my game stage? The answer is get more levels and survive for longer without dying, as this will factor in your game stage calculation. Now there are other ways to get better loot, but here's the problem. The 7 Days to Die wiki is horrifically out of date. The forums are all filled with people giving anecdotal advice and downright misinformation, and the 7 Days to Die subreddit isn't much better from what I've seen. So when I was tracking down the information for today's video, I searched and searched for how certain items affected your loot to no avail. So I did what every well-adjusted adult does when they realise something is difficult. I gave up and used my time on something else. Psych, I went to the fucking game files. So the following information comes straight out of the game's files, but do keep in mind that I might misinterpret or overlook something while doing this. So if you have more experience with 7 Days to Die's code and can explain it better than I can, by all means leave a comment down below, and if you can provide some evidence to support it, I'll pin the comment for everybody to see my mistake. All that said, there are some secondary things you can do to improve the loot you get in 7 Days to Die. Method number 1 is to wear lucky goggles. According to the game's code, the lucky goggles add a base value to your loot game stage. This value will depend on the goggles, so keep an eye out for better quality ones. Method number 2 is to invest in the Lucky Looter skill. Lucky Looter's skill description describes its effect as a loot bonus, which to a new player is probably confusing because it's described as a percentage, which could mean anything. It could mean 25% more loot, 25% higher level loot, or 25% higher loot game stage. According to the game's code, it is the latter, with the final rank of Lucky Looter giving the player 25% higher loot game stage than they would normally have. Do note that this will not increase the difficulty or the level of enemies you fight. This perk is more effective when you already have a decent loot game stage somewhere in the mid-game, perhaps around week 2 or 3, but it still does have an effect after game stage 91, and having a higher game stage after 91 may not increase the tier of loot, but it does still increase the chance of you getting the more rare items in that loot tier. Method number 3 is eye candy. No, not that kind of eye candy, literal candy for your eyes. Again, according to the game's files, eye candy increases your loot game stage by 5 and also increases it by 10%. I assume that means it will add the 5 and then increase your total loot game stage by 10%. As an honourable mention, we have the Lucky Looter perk books. Each book will increase how much of a certain item you get when looting. To avoid drawing out the video, here is an example. Lucky Looter Volume 1 will increase the amount of Duke coins you get in loot. Those books will not increase your loot game stage and won't let you find more of anything cool like machine guns or advanced schematics. They are a great perk book series to collect to make your looting experience that much more lucrative. And just to cover all bases, I'd like to make one final point, and that is where to get better loot. If you're unaware, almost every POI that's point of interest in 7 Days to Die has an end of dungeon loot room. In this room, you'll usually find an assortment of crates, some kind of chest or safe. Typically larger POIs have a hardened chest at the end. These are the best source of loot in the game, but at lower levels, smaller POIs have reinforced chests at the end, which are less lucrative than hardened chests but can be found far easier and are rarely locked, unlike hardened chests or gun safes. Just as a side note, if you're brand new to the game and don't know how to unlock something, hold E or whatever activate button you use on controller and a context menu will appear. Select the lock and the game will begin a small timer. This timer is basically the game's lockpicking minigame. To do this, you need to have lockpicks in your inventory, which can be looted all over the map in many types of containers or crafted at a workbench. If your pick breaks, don't worry, you can just try again. So this is a bit of a long video, so just to tie it all up in a neat bow, to get better loot, reach higher levels, don't die, wear lucky goggles, invest in Lucky Looter skills, read the Lucky Looter books, eat eye candy, and find the end of dungeon loot. That's it. You should now know how to go from wooden clubs to M60s. If you enjoyed the video or learned something new, leave a like, it helps the channel out a lot. Consider subscribing to see more content like this. That's it for today's video guys. Thanks for watching, see ya!